John's a 31-year veteran of law enforcement. He was involved in both criminal and archaeological resource crimes. I'd never heard of that. Anyone ever heard of archaeological resource crimes? That's stealing archaeological treasures, and I didn't know there were cops that dealt with that. Jonathan has appeared on Skinwalker Ranch, Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, Coast to Coast, Unsolved Mysteries. Little known fact about John is that since he was a kid, has been a martial arts practitioner, and therefore I'm not going to try and tackle him when he comes up here. So, John, welcome. We're looking forward to hearing what you have to share.
Hopefully that's all the noise we're going to make up here. Okay, we're going to have some fun today. First off, I want to explain who I am, because in Native culture, you tell people exactly who you are. So, of course, you know my name, Jonathan Redbird Dover. Redbird comes from my Cheyenne side. I am part Navajo. I am part Cheyenne. I am part what they used to call Kiowa Apache, which is, they call it Apache Tribe of Oklahoma now. And I'm part Filipino. So I just got it all mixed up. I have chief's blood on two sides. I'm a direct descendant of White Antelope, who was killed at Sand Creek Massacre. And White Antelope had met the President of the United States and had a peace medal on him. My great-grandmother escaped from Bosque Redondo with Navajos as a little girl of about 8 to 10 years old, and made it through soldiers, through Mexican slavers, through Indian parties looking to collect bounty, and through settlers that were also looking to collect bounty, and the bounty was dead or alive. All you had to do was bring in a scalp. And she made it all the way home. So there's a lot of history, but I can only trace it back to 1864. And that's about the time that they started the first census. So we're going to take you on a little bit of a journey. We cut the first part of this off because my presentation can go up 2 hours. And we show you all the different stuff that the Rangers do, but we won't bore you with a lot of that. Needless to say, I've got over 4,000 hours of training in law enforcement. My academy, my basic police academy, normally they're 13 weeks long. Mine was 6 months long. I had to be certified in Arizona, New Mexico, in Utah, and I had to be federally certified and tribally certified. After that, the training just kept going. I've been through criminal investigation school at Glencoe, Georgia. I've been to doing accident reconstruction and technical accident investigations. So I was certified in the state of Arizona. Hazardous materials operational first responder. I was seeing so many accidents that I sent myself through a month and a half of concentrated training to get an EMT license. And so I was doing medical stuff and would have the patient ready for transport on a backboard and ready to go. And to this day, after 31 years, I don't know how many lives are still out there because of my work. And I never followed up on any of them. And if you ask any good cops, they'll tell you that the best thing to do is not bother following your cases, because otherwise you're going to get frustrated finding out how many of them got released. And so I did my job. I was the only person. I went to work for Winslow, Arizona Police Department. I was a sergeant over there for a while, and I was the only person ever accused of being too professional for a police department. I hold that in high honor. So, we'll get right to it here. The Rangers, what they do is they do resource law enforcement. So, game and fish, forestry, water resources, mineral resources. We had a search and rescue function. My specialty was archaeological resources. And so we've got over 3 million archaeological sites. And a single pot can be sold in Germany for $40,000. So we had people coming out. And what they would do is they would have one guy sleeping, one guy digging, and one guy with a high-powered rifle overwatching them. And this was normal. And we actually got a lot of convictions doing this. I was only one of 2 people in the western United States doing this job. So anyway, we got into this paranormal stuff. And I like to tell people that we did not volunteer. We were voluntold. We had 2 rangers that were assigned to a Bigfoot case, and they met with an elderly couple. The elderly couple watched a Bigfoot come up to their corral, step over the corral, put a sheep under its arm, step back over, and walk off with it. So the 2 rangers that were assigned were a couple of rookies, and they're young guys. And both of them are, we call them jokers. If you ever seen 2 kids together that just giggle and laugh all the time and got little private jokes, that's how these guys were. And so they were giggling and laughing about whatever private joke they had that day, and Grandma and Grandpa didn't like it. And so Grandma called up the Rangers department, and she let our chief ranger have it. And I like to say, only as a elderly Navajo grandma can chew you out. It's bad. So he called a department meeting, and he's pretty much scolded everybody. He says, from now on, these cases will be investigated professionally. They will be documented. And then he turned to me and Stan, my buddy, and he says, and you guys are getting the major cases. Those major cases averaged about 60 to 75 per year. A lot of them were just flybys. You know, I saw something there and it went there and it was gone. But some of them were very significant. And we documented them. We interviewed people, and they ran the gamut of UFOs, Bigfoot, hauntings, and Navajo Skinwalkers. Now, when we talk about Navajo Skinwalkers today, when we get to that point, I'll warn you up front, if any of this conversation makes you a little nervous, you're welcome to get up and get a cup of coffee or a glass of water or something and come back. All we're trying to do is give you information on what we saw and what we investigated. Talking about the Skinwalker phenomenon, we only talk about the Navajo version, but all across the United States are other versions of this same thing. So just be aware of that. So that's our makeshift badge. We have a disclaimer. It basically says that everything that we're talking about today, this is our opinions based on what we've investigated, because we don't want the tribe to come and sue us. So that's our picture from Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix. Season 3, Episode 5. We told them when they came out that we would not do this unless they told our story correctly. And much to our delight, They actually provided a really good show that kind of showcased exactly what we did without ridicule and without hyping it up any more than it actually was. This is Beyond Skinwalker. The guy on the with the ponytail is supposedly ex-CIA operative. I don't know what he did in the CIA. We'll talk about some of that case after a while. But they came out, they said, we're not looking for skinwalkers. We just want to see if you have the same phenomenon that's seen at Skinwalker Ranch. We got up on top of this mesa, and 12 o'clock midnight, and we heard a scream from down in the canyon, a woman's scream. And the medicine man that was with us says, "Did you hear that?" And Stan says, "Yeah, I heard that. I didn't hear anything because my ears are bad. My family says I have selective hearing." So they said, maybe it's a skinwalker. And they said, we should get it on film. And we had told them ahead of time, if you go looking for skinwalkers, we're calling this off. And that's what we did. So we've seen people that almost got killed by these things, and we don't want to put anyone in danger. Those are our Hollywood pictures. This is where they take every blemish off your face and clean you up really nice and make you look pretty. That's what we look like normally. So we're going to jump right into the cases. We call this the night before the Phoenix Lights. 1997, I believe. Just before the Phoenix Lights hit, in my neighborhood, in a town called Loop, L-E-U-P-P, 45 miles northeast of Flagstaff. And we started seeing these lights in the distance. My brother-in-law, I was married at the time, came running in. He says, "Oh my God, you ought to see what just went over the house." He described a triangle-shaped craft that was silent. And so we went outside and looked. So this is kind of what Loop looks like facing Flagstaff. That's the peaks in the background, San Francisco peaks. And we don't have to worry about wildfires. There's no trees to burn. That's one of the neighborhoods there. And if you can imagine, people were coming out of their houses to look at these lights. And they shut off their lights. They brought lawn chairs out and probably popcorn. And what we saw was something similar. This is just a representation. But we saw something similar like this going through, circling our community in a counterclockwise direction. And as it circled, the lights, the first light would change color. The second light would change color, the same color as the first one. And they just kept following the leader like that. Then the first one would fluoresce like a flare going off, just a bright white flare. And then it would dim, and the next one would do the same thing. So we were just mesmerized by this. I went in and got my video camcorder as an 8mm, a high 8, and I started video taping this thing. It went on for 30 to 40 minutes. About a week after, after this, we thought, man, all the newspaper, all the press are going to be over here wanting to interview everybody. And the very next night, the Phoenix Lights happened, and nobody ever came out. During this case, I did call the Coconino County Sheriff's Department. I had their non-emergency number. And I talked to their dispatcher, and I said, "Do you guys have any officers up on the north end of Flagstaff?" And the girl says, "No, we don't." And I said, "Okay, never mind," and I hung up. Because in those days, you were ridiculed if you reported anything having to do with UFOs. You're a crazy person. Although we've seen them all the time out there, nobody ever talks about it. So yes, we do have Bigfoot in that desert. We have a big ponderosa pine forest that goes all up and down the reservation there. And we have a lot of reports of this guy. Here you can see one of the photos that we took. And I know you can't see it very well, so of course we've enhanced it a little bit. And there's the footprint. That footprint is 21 inches long. So I don't think anybody came by and just drew that in the sand. Now the thing is that these footprints had a 5-foot stride from heel to heel. We measured it. I cannot do a 5-foot stride. I would have to do the splits, and I'm sorry, I can't do the splits. So we tracked this thing. We found hair samples nearby, and that's about a 35 to 40 degree slope. And this thing walked up it just like nothing. Now remember, 5 foot between those flags going up that rise. We tracked it for about a mile, and the tracks disappeared in trackable ground. So we said, let's go back the other way. We backtracked, went back to the scene, and we started tracking from the other direction. And the tracks appeared in trackable ground. And me and Stan are both trackers. You know, we can look at the ground and tell even if a pebble is pushed down to see if somebody walked through there. And there was nothing. So we have a theory about that we'll get into a little later. There's some more footprint evidence from a different case. This one, a Indian Health Service worker from Chin Lee, a nurse, saw this cross the road in front of her. And so Stan took a look. There's all the footprints going through the mud. What was kind of cool about this is you notice up at the top of the screen, all the police units are parked there. Every time we went out, they were curious. They wanted to know what we were doing. Navajo police do not investigate these type of cases. They do not investigate UFOs. They want nothing to do with skinwalkers. But when the TV cameras come out and cops show up, they're over there going, oh yeah, we do skinwalkers. We do all these, the howler and all this stuff. No, we know all those guys. They don't do that. There's some of the casting that was done. And we take these on the road with us occasionally. And Stan worked a case where he had these rocks. The rock in the middle there probably weighs a good 12 pounds. And he had about 15 of these rocks come flying up from the road below. And he said you could hear it breaking pine tree branches, snap, 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 as it was coming through the trees from 100 yards down the hill. And they were landing about 15 feet away from him and another investigator. So after about the 7th rock, they decided, maybe we should move. How many of you have seen that guy before? That's Dwayne Ollinger from Blind Frog Ranch. He got a hold of us and he said, hey, I've got some Bigfoot tracks out on my property. So we thought, out in Utah? He goes, no, over in Las Vegas, New Mexico. So he had bought some land over there. And he says, what do I do? How do I preserve them? So we told him, and pay attention to instructions. We told him, take a bin, turn it upside down over the track, put heavy rock on top of it or something heavy on it, and it'll preserve it because it's going to take us 2 weeks to get up there. They had a fire in this area previously. And so you could see some of the burned trees, and there was a lot of ash on the ground. And these tracks were in a wash. So after it rained a few times, can anyone guess what happened? Instead of putting a bin over it, he used plywood. So the water washed down into that ravine, and the ash covered the tracks. So I'm sitting there going, okay, think fast, rabbit. And I went back to my archaeological background because I'd worked with a lot of archaeologists over the years. And when you took the thing off, that's what it looked like. Didn't look like much. You can see. We took a bulb syringe and we took a paintbrush and we started brushing. Because the idea behind this is that when the ground was compressed underneath, it has a greater density than the ash that flowed in on top. And what we saw, you can see on the bottom there, is this foot track. The ruler on the top there is where the heel is. And we didn't get a lot of detail, but we were able to show that there was a track there. On the other side of the wash, that's the track that came out there. What's interesting about that one is this ground is pretty hard. And when that thing stepped on that, it cracked the earth under it. So we know it was a pretty good weight. So I'm often asked, what is the strangest thing that ever happened to you? And the strangest thing was that I gained time. You know, we've been talking about time with Joe today and everybody else. Every month, I'm averaging 5,000 to 7,000 miles a month of road highway travel, and in my tribal vehicle, my police unit. And every month, I go from my hometown in Loop up to Kaikotsmavi on state, Navajo Route 2, 47 miles, and another 58 miles across Tuba City where that pin is. I have a routine since I do this every month. I get up before the sun comes up, I fire up my truck, I get in, I drive the speed limit because if you speed through Hopi, they don't care who you are, they will cite you. So there's no law enforcement, good guys. They'll write you just as soon as look at you. So I put it on cruise and I'm doing, 65 going up and I'm doing 65 across Tuba City. I have it timed out so that by the time I get to Tuba City, I can go through a fast food restaurant drive-through, get my cup of coffee, get a sandwich, go drive across the street to the fleet management and wait at the gate. Within just a few minutes, they will come and open the gate. I'll be the first one to get my oil change. So I don't have to wait all day. This particular day, as I got up to Kaikotsmavi, where I turned left there and go across, I'm going by a place called Denapato Dam. I looked in front of me. This is just a representation to give you an idea, but I looked in front in my headlights. It's getting to the pre-dawn where the sunlight is just showing on the horizon, but no sun yet. I looked in front and I thought, that's a long, long straight road. I looked in my rearview mirror, same thing. I blinked. When I opened my eyes, I was coming to a sharp turn. That sharp turn was at Coal Mine Mesa, which is another 15 miles up the road. Now, normally you think, did I just go on cruise control? Did I, zombie zone, and I was just driving. But you're going up and down hills, you're going around curves, and believe me, you don't want to go around some of these curves and not be aware because it's a long way down and there's no guardrails. So I thought, wow, that's weird. I must have just zoned out. So I get to the big town of Tuba City, and up at the top of that road, at the top of the picture, there's a fast food restaurant. And I went to the drive-thru, got my sandwich, got my coffee, went across the street, sat at the deal, and I waited for 45 minutes. So I've had people tell me, oh my God, you were abducted, and the aliens put you down in the wrong time. I had somebody else tell me, you hit the event horizon of a microscopic black hole, and it changed time. I, to this day, do not have a good explanation for what happened, other than it was weird. And I'm one of those skeptical people that if I saw a UFO land, I'd go over and kick it over and see whose name was stamped on the bottom, made in. So, and I'm a curious type. I've seen a large cigar shape. At the time I was married, my wife was screaming at me. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. She's screaming at me, get in the car, get in the car. I got out of the car and I'm standing there just watching it. It's about 200 yards away. And if it would have came down, I would have asked it for a ride. I got back in the car. The show that was big back then was Mulder and Scully, X-Files. So I remember getting out of the car and I looked at my watch. And then I got out, and then when I got back in, I looked at it again to see if I had lost any time. Didn't do anything. We went back home. It went out of sight. It was going 15 miles an hour or so. Completely blacked out with a single light coming out of the front aimed at the ground. And a big, heavy engine noise. When we got home, a shooting star went over us, and she says, they're coming back, and she ran in the house. Today, if I ask her, I see her every now and then, and I'll ask her, do you remember that time we saw that UFO? She looks at me dead in the eye, and she says, it never happened. So we have the old man case here. As you can see, we took great caution to keep people's identity secret. We guarantee people's anonymity for Navajos when they report these things. And the two people on each side of this couple, those are investigators from Bob Bigelow Aerospace Research, or the NIDS team. We found out later that all these guys were special ops people in the military. And they actually told us, you guys should join us. We get paid, lots of money to do this. And we asked them, how come you're investigating these things? They said, Bob Bigelow wants to get ahead of the aerospace industry and glean technology. So we covered up the identity of the house too. But that's the house in question. This old man, he's about mid-80s, and he's Navajo. His wife and his daughter had gone to Phoenix. And he sees this light through the window. It looks like headlights coming to his house. There's no electricity. There's no running water. And he sees this light coming, so he says, who's coming to my house? He goes out the front door and looks and sees this thing in the sky about maybe 30 feet in diameter that starts, and it's got lights around the middle of it, circling. And it goes around his house a couple of times, and it goes up on the ridge line and either hovers or lands. He says something comes out and goes to a neighbor's house. Then he sees it go back up to the ship or whatever it was, and then it comes down toward his house. He has a pup It's a blue heeler mix. And this pup starts, yap, 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 and it takes off running toward these things as they're coming toward him. In the darkness, he hears the pup go, yipe, and it comes running back to the house, laid down by the step, curled into a ball, and would not move. So now he's feeling a little uneasy. These little solar lights are going to come into play in just a minute. But he describes, in Navajo, there is no word for alien. But Navajo is a very descriptive language. So he says, what the heck are these kids doing around my house at this time? It's like 1 a.m. What are these little children doing around my house? And he describes them as having big heads, skinny bodies. They're wearing white or light gray skin-tight outfits. And they have big black eyes that he says almost wrap around their head. And he says that as they went up to these lights, there were 4 of them. Each one had a light in its hand with a half-inch collimated beam, like a laser. One was blue, green, red, and yellow. And he says they were shining around like they were looking for something on the ground. As they saw these solar lights, they gathered around it. And he says as they leaned in, this light would go out. And they'd back up and the light would come on. And he says they were just fascinated with us. They followed the lights out to the outhouse and looked inside. Don't ask me. And then they came back around the house again. By this time, he's getting a little pissed off. And he says, I don't know what these little children are doing, but I'm going to get after them. And as only an 80-plus-year-old person can do. You're forgiven a lot of things at that age. So he goes out the door, around the back of the house. He's got a little square flashlight with those dry cell batteries. And as he turns the corner, he tripped on the back step and fell down. Now, you and I know that at 80 plus, if you take a fall, it's serious. He says next thing he did, he looked up and these things were in a line together, gliding back up the hill with no sound. So we started the investigation. There's the lights in question that he's referring to. You can get these at Walmart, Home Depot. There's the outhouse with the lights leading up to it. Of course, if you live in the dark and you don't got electricity, you want your path lit, especially if it's an emergency. That's the back of me with one of the other rangers. And we brought out some people to take radiation readings and all that good stuff. Now, one of the girls, you notice they're wearing Tyvek suits. One of the girls was a real dog lover. This pup had come up to me and Stan, and we're in uniform, and is jumping up and down, trying to lick us to death. And we were hard-pressed to push it away because it's muddy, and if you're a cop, you don't want to have mud all over your pants. So, we're pushing it back. This girl showed up, and she says, hey, puppy, and she was wearing the white suit, and she, slapping her thighs and saying, come here, boy, come here. It saw that white suit, ran to the doorstep of the house, curled up in a ball, and would not move. So here's the team going out to take GPS readings. We had a court interpreter, federal court interpreter, doing simultaneous translation because the old man only spoke Navajo. This dog had pups, and it's a Rottweiler. And it was trying to break that chain when we were there. He said that when these things came around the house, this dog went in the doghouse and would not come out. There's the dog in question. Now for the bad news. 2 weeks after this incident, this pup died. The family did not tell us about this, otherwise we would have taken it to the vet and had it necropsied. But we suspect that whatever they shot it with probably caused its demise. We ran into these circular impressions in the ground. Almost look like you take a coffee can and just stamp it in. And we saw that they were in a line, one after the other. We don't have any explanation for it, just that it was there, and we recorded it as evidence. There's one of Bigelow's guys. They got all the fancy equipment. We didn't have very much equipment. Anything we had, we bought ourselves because our department was poor. There they are with their computers in the field. And the neighbors, do you remember I told you that this thing went to a neighbor's house first, about a half mile away from this guy's residence? They had 7 of these pups. This is just kind of give you an idea of what they might have looked like. They were furry little balls that were at the stage in their life where they fall all over themselves and just roll around, and they can't hardly walk, and they're just cute as all get out. Those 7 pups disappeared that same night. And we went over there and looked at it as part of the investigation. Usually if you have a predator, you'll see fur, you'll see blood, you'll see all kinds of stuff, you'll see even mangled little bodies. And dogs will kill and leave them. You know, they're indiscriminate about it. But in this case, we never found any evidence that those dogs were ever there. Okay, here we go with the Skinwalkers. A Navajo Skinwalker is somebody who learns how to do evil things. There's nothing good about these guys. They are very, very dangerous. The Skinwalker is pretty much is welcomed into a very unique brotherhood. In order to get in, you have to kill somebody you love dearly in your own family. Might be your kids, your wife, somebody in your family that you really care about. If a kid, you know how kids are always running around exploring, and if a kid runs into one of these little covens of Skinwalkers, they will give him a choice. Decide who in your family's to die, or you're going to die. And if you decide who in your family's going to die, we'll teach you what we know, and you're ours forever. They are taught how to change form. They are not avatars. They are real people. They can be shot, they can be killed. The problem is that they can run blindingly fast. They can keep up with cars going highway speeds. They can change shape into animals, whether it's birds, whether it's coyotes or wolves or whatever. And so when we talk about Skinwalkers, we think about Tony Hillerman. And we had all our actors. We have this idea that they're werewolves, and that if you get bit by one, you might turn into a werewolf. Well, that's all Lon Chaney from about 1939. We have these representations. If you look it up online, this is what you'll see as far as images. You have the Ferranzetta style of scary stuff. The reality is much different. You will see this picture, and I'm going to drop some knowledge on you here. You will see this picture on some TV shows. We won't mention which ones. I have gotten a chance to talk to the producers. This is a holy being. He is called a Yebiche dancer. The Yebiche dancers are star people who have come to the Navajo to impart knowledge. They have dancers dressed like this every fall that make their way around the communities and ask for money. The Yebiche, like I said, are gods. And what's interesting is there are usually 10 to 12 of them. The last one in the line is always referred to as the clown. The clown doesn't do anything right. He does everything backwards. He does everything wrong. He won't listen. And believe it or not, he represents the five-fingered people. That's you and me. So the gods tell him what to do, how to live his life. He won't do it. He kills people. He hurts people. He creates war in opposition to what the gods are trying to teach man. Here's another picture. Yeah, they look otherworldly, don't they? So I was able to tell these producers that it would just be like me putting up this guy and saying that's Satan incarnate. Same thing, right? And here's his demons. That got their attention. And hopefully they're going to set up a class for all their editors and people, and they're going to try to purge those pictures out of their database. I guess depending on what denomination you are, they could be Satan and his demons. Just depends. I studied theology. So the Skinwalker can turn into a coyote, a wolf, even show up as a mangy dog. They can show up as owls. Owls for Native Americans are considered the hairbringers of doom, as birds or crows. This is a female Navajo hogan. This is where they live. The door always faces to the east. You get up before sunrise. You go out to your doorway as the sun's coming up, and you take your tutadine, your corn pollen, and you say your prayers for the morning to the four directions as the sun comes up. We have seen from the 1920s hogans with their door facing to the west. The cultural specialist would not get anywhere near this hogan because he says this is where witchcraft was taught. So it's still being taught today. And I've had the experience of investigating witchcraft cases. I've seen people who were poisoned. The witch will actually carry a piece of bone, a human bone from the radius or ulna, and they will pack it with something called corpse powder. This is ground up human flesh and bone, along with other poisons that are put in there. The people that I've seen poisoned with it, doctors could not determine what was wrong with them. And in one case, the guy said he was laying in bed, he was crapping out one side and vomiting out the other, laying in a pool of sweat. His wife grabbed him and a neighbor and carried him to a pickup truck, drove almost 100 miles to see a medicine man. When they went in, the medicine man said if you had been another hour, he would have been dead. Another guy, producer that came out to shoot a sizzle reel with us, and we saw a coyote come between us and a hogan about 15 feet away. He got sick. He stayed sick for 1.5 years and almost died. So kind of put the kibosh on his career before the strikes. So we have the Orb Case. We're going to keep rolling here. Young lady's coming back from Flagstaff at 1 a.m, and she's going through this this track here that's highlighted. So this is what she's seeing. Up between those two cinder hills, she sees a red light. And the red light has a three-dimensional look to it. Her first thought is, what's a helicopter doing there in the middle of the night, hovering? As she drives, this thing starts coming down this hill and paralleling her course, trying to intersect her. Now she's really looking at it. She sees it going over this grass, and she can see it's about 6 foot above the ground, and it's lighting up the ground underneath. As she comes to the reservation line there, she hits this right-hand turn, and you have to take your eyes off of what she's looking at, which is right on the side of her car. And because she doesn't want to run off the road, right? And as she's looking back the other way from the res line toward Flagstaff, as she's driving, this ball of light is now about smaller than a volleyball but bigger than a softball, is how she described it. And it's right along the left side of the road as she's driving, right alongside her car. She's watching this thing. She tries to take her phone and go over and take a picture. She says it won't show up in the viewfinder, but she looks out the front windshield and she can clearly see the road. As she gets going, this thing had turned white now. And as she's going for about a mile, this thing's right alongside her car, it suddenly speeds up and takes off across the sky looking like a shooting star. So she thinks, wow, that was weird. She gets home. Now, one of these STAR team members from MUFON, we talked to them about this case, and this is a MUFON case that we gave them. And Chuck Modlin, who is a physicist, told us to take a compass and walk around the car. And he also told us to pull the oil filter and send it in for analysis, or send it to them and they would send it in. So when we walked around, where that arrow is, there's a high magnetic place right there. You could be 3 feet away from the side of that car and that needle would pin. And you could move to either side and the needle would stay right on that spot. You go around the other side, just in front of the passenger door, there's another magnetic anomaly. Whatever was on the side of the car was scanning that car, and that scan went right through the driver. So the girl gets home. This is the oil filter results. This is from the MUFON, monthly deal. And it shows a very high incidence of sodium nitrite. Sodium nitrite basically is hot dog water. It is not a byproduct of oil. It is not a byproduct of an oil filter. They don't know how it got in there. Shortly after that, that girl's car, the alternator went out, the battery died. It was a new car too. And she started having computer problems and just took it in and says, I want a different car. As she pulls into the house, you know, everybody's thinking, that's it. Wow, that was weird. She pulled into the house. And that's exactly where she parked. You see in front of her car, maybe about 4 or 5 feet, is an area of disturbed soil. You can't see it very good right there, but what we did is we went back at night, and now you can see the broken up earth. That is caliche clay. It is so hard, I would have to kick it with a boot 5, 6 times before it even cracked the surface. Something was on there that broke the surface of that ground. She describes it as she rolls up, she saw a 3.5 foot tall to 4 foot tall rabbit in front of her. She said it had black eyes and it did not blink. Its fur was a peppered color, tan and black. No distinctive markings. She says it sat like you would see a cat sit on the ground. Its ears went back at an angle from its head, and they were both plastered together. She's very, very odd looking. And she sat there and immediately called her brother, who lived in Phoenix, and said, if anything happens to me, call somebody, get help. And after talking to him for about 5 minutes, she says, I'm going to make my move. She opened her car door. She went backwards, slammed the door, ran around the back of the car and into the side of the house, locked the door behind her. She didn't sleep that night. So you could see the marks pretty clear, so something obviously was there. The next morning, she woke up and she had a migraine headache. She'd never had a migraine in her life. And to this day, she has migraine headaches all the time. So we have determined that this was an alien of some kind or a being of some kind. And this is what is called a screenshot memory. You see something that doesn't look scary. It's not supposed to look scary to you. You see a big giant sunflower, you see a giant butterfly, you see a deer, you see something else that isn't going to just wig you out. And so in your mind, that's what you're seeing, not what's really there. Several weeks later, she sees this orb coming down the other side of the hill on the right side of the car. That one is almost a hexagonal or octagonal shape, and it's as big as a cab-over tractor, truck, 18-wheeler cab. And her and her brother were together, and they saw this thing, and they floored it and probably hit about 100 miles an hour trying to get away from this thing. So, moving on, mother and daughter case. Mother and daughter are traveling home on this Navajo Route 6 up near Chinle toward Pinon. And as they're driving up, they see something out in this area, or this is where they were when they saw it. So what they saw, the mother sees these lights out in the distance, about 100 yards long. What do you think the daughter was doing? She had her headphones in her ears, and she was looking at her phone. So the mother finally reached over, whack! Look at that! And when the daughter looked, she saw that. They said it was about 3 stories tall. If you have ever passed a power station or something at night, and you see all the lights all over the place, that's how they said it looked, but they said that there were flashes of light behind, like there were windows with lights flashing intermittently behind there. And the mother, just like you and me, hey, we ought to drive over there and see what it is. And the daughter says, oh no, don't go over there. I had a dream about this and it didn't end well. So that's Stan's representation of what that thing might have looked like. So they're looking out here and the lights went out. Suddenly they see a black dome appear and a flash. And the thing takes off. At that same time, there was a blackout in the town of Chinle, Arizona. NTUA, the Navajo Tribal Utility Authority, verified there was a blackout, but could not give any explanation for it. When the mother and daughter got home to Pinon, they said it was like the apocalypse hit. They said that there was heavy wind, 100-mile-an-hour wind. There was snow like a blizzard, and they thought it was the end of the world. We call this one the Satan butt case. We had a real nice slide prepared, and we put it on a Macintosh computer, and it cut the end of the word off, and it left Satan butt. That's part of Satan Butte right there. Again, Bigelow came out. They were very interested in this one. Guy sees these lights flying across the desert there, and they go into the mesa. Flying into it, not around it, not over it, into it. And he describes something with treadles coming out, lit up treadles, either dragging on the ground or just above the ground. And he runs in and tells his wife. And what do you think his wife said? Yeah, right. No, honest, I saw a light. So he went down to Flagstaff and bought himself a really nice camera. And these are the pictures that he took with it. She came out and saw it finally and said, okay, now I believe you. Wives are like that. So these are some of the pictures that he took that he submitted to MUFON. This is what happens when your hand shakes when you got a camera. And while he was doing this, then later on, he starts having other unusual things happen. He had skinwalkers coming around his house. He had, for those of you here that know anything about horses, I like to say I know just enough to get myself hurt. He saw what he calls a standing torpedo on the other side of his corral. What drew his attention to it is he said the horses were blowing, and they were all crowded into one corner of the corral. And so he took his pellet gun out thinking that it was a stud because it's all open range out there. And as he saw this thing, what do us guys do? We poke it with a stick, we throw a rock at it, you know. So he whips up this pellet gun, shoots at this thing, and hears it go ping, and it zipped off and ended up about a quarter mile away outside another house. We looked and looked and looked all over that area to see if we could find the pellet. Lead doesn't show up very well with a metal detector, especially that's something that small. But he had skinwalkers show up at his house, and pretty soon he decided to move. He didn't move to the next town over. He moved to the East Coast. Then he moved to Oklahoma. Now he's in Cottonwood, I believe. And but he never came back to the res. So we have theories. Here we go with the same picture again, but that's the best picture we can come up with. Yeah, Bigfoot. If you look at our planet, we are bombarded by radiation from the sun. Now, this is an exaggeration. We're not that close, okay? So don't measure it and go, oh, man, you know. But if you look at the other side of the planet, if you go, I'm a fly fisherman, and if you fish, you want to drop your fly right in that dead water behind the planet, because then it'll swirl around and all the fish that are sitting there will see it. Interestingly enough, where the darkest part of that is, it's about 3 a.m, the witching hour. And if you have all this radiation bombarding the earth and there's a vacuum on the other side, doesn't that maybe explain why we have unusual occurrences after 3 a.m? Because all that latent energy that's there can manifest. We found out a long time ago investigating haunted places, if you show any fear, they can take that fear and manifest even more. So we were telling the TV producers, don't ask us to act surprised or run around going, oh my God, you know, it's not going to happen. We started thinking about in terms of dimensional gates all the way back in 2009. In Navajo culture, they talk about coming through several different worlds. A world of darkness, or an aquatic world, world of insects, a world of giants. And we came in two of those worlds, from the aquatic world and the next world, we came into this world through a hole in the sky. And in the last world, they actually put, they say reeds, but I'm thinking something wooden structure to climb up into that hole. And they came out in the place of emergence near the Four Corners region. A lot of other Indian tribes have similar stories about their emergence or where they came from. We started looking at that and thinking, what if they came through a portal from a different dimension? What if they traveled through a succession of different dimensions? We live in a vast universe. These are galaxies. They are not planets. They are not suns. They are galaxies, each one of them. And there's quadrillions of them. I mean, more than we can imagine. And yet we think we're the hottest thing around because we know how to make a digital watch and we can bully brute our way flying across the sky. This is our public service announcement. Please do not play with these Ouija boards or talking boards. Every Navajo kid we've ever talked to has told us that this thing has ruined their lives. So what we've asked about it with the people that know, have some background, they tell us that this is a portal, but it is an unfiltered portal, which means that there's no guarantee what's going to come out of it. So interestingly enough, you can see where the marketing is going nowadays. Your little girl can have one of these. You can go to the store and look at the shelf. So be careful with it. It's not a toy. We ran into something we call shadow phenomenon. And as soon as we mentioned this, we're going down to Phoenix on the Beeline Highway, State Route 87. And we just got past Payson. As we're driving, doing the speed limit because we do not speed, we see a shadow pass over the road in front of us. Right away, I says, Stan, where's the aircraft? They're clocking people by aircraft. And we both looked all over the place. We didn't see any aircraft. We mentioned this case, and other people have said, yeah, I've seen that too. Mowing my lawn, and I saw a shadow go over, and there's nothing in the sky. We've seen this on quite a number of occasions. Stan has even come to a screeching halt in the middle of the road, jumped out, and looked horizon to horizon and never saw anything. So are we talking about cloak craft now? We ran into something called streetlight interference. Have you ever been driving down the road, and as you get underneath a light, it goes out? So Stan has had 35 lights in a row go out. And no, it wasn't his headlights were so bright that it hit the photo sensor and shut the light off. His headlights at the time looked like they had a candle behind it. And we had to strip it all off and sand it and polish it. So we know it wasn't his headlights. In this case, they found, they take a ball. This is a haunting case. They take a ball, spread talcum powder around it, and there's a footprint on that ball up near the top. That ball, when they went to pick it up, had disappeared from the room. It rolled out of the room. It went around the door. It went up the stairs. And it ended up into another office in the wastebasket. 2 points. There's another footprint there. That's a moccasin track right in the middle. Stan was doing another investigation, and that face appeared in the glass. There's nobody else in the building. We've worked around a lot of special ops people, Green Berets, Delta Force, Navy SEALs, just you name it, we've trained with them, weapons training. Here's a couple of guys that showed up right after the old man case. They're at the Navajo Nation Inn. And what was interesting is the marquee on the front of the hotel said, "Welcome NASA scientists." We contacted MUFON. They contacted their people in NASA. NASA says, no, there's no meeting of NASA scientists in Window Rock, Arizona. So, of course, being the curious people we are, we took pictures of them. Then we went outside and took pictures of their vehicles. That chair rolled across the 30 feet across the floor. Stan started seeing in one investigation that he did, he started seeing coins doing what they call an apport. These coins would fall out of the air and land. They'd spin, they'd jump, they'd roll, they'd bounce off people and off walls. 65 coins over 2 nights appeared, all of them heads up. That's a statistical impossibility. He goes to his house. These fell down right in his doorway, so it followed him home. Then he had this coin fall on his counter. It's a 2 yuan Taiwanese coin. We were hoping that that meant we were going to go to Taiwan, but that didn't happen. He's at training and these things drop in the middle of the floor or behind the desk at his hotel room. I keep saying, keep looking for that 1943 wheat cent penny that's copper, and you can make a mint. We had a friend of ours, these showed up at a conference, and he called us and he was panicked. He was listening to a presentation by Colonel Holt from Rendlesham Forest. And he got hit in the leg with one of these coins. He looked around, there's nobody else in the room, picked up the coin, stuck it in his pocket. Another one hit him in the leg. Picked up that coin, shoved it in his pocket. He looked at them, there were 2 1-pound British coins. This picture was taken in Lukachukai. We call it the flying onion. It's taken during the winter, so it's not an insect. And that's a game camera, and at night that showed up. We went out to Lake Powell to recover a body, and we saw this going across the sky. Exactly like that, too. And then as we watched 2 jets following it with full afterburners. And believe it or not, that thing just sped up even faster, but still doing that zigzag all the way to the horizon, just left these jets in the dust. I've been followed for about 25 miles by a green orb while I was in my truck. And Stan was followed by a Skinwalker. So we do have a personal life. We found E.T. and got our picture with him. Found him at Orange County. I dance in the powwows. And I dance with the Warrior Society in Oklahoma. You can kind of gauge what kind of music I like. 60s and 70s folk. Can you guess what kind of music Stan likes? And people about fell off their chairs when they saw this picture. We got to present in Scotland, in Stirling, Scotland. And we asked them ahead of time, hey, send us your soccer jerseys because I'm a big soccer fan. And they sent us the Celtic jerseys. We flashed this picture up. Everybody about fell out of their chairs because there are 2 soccer teams in Scotland. One is the Celtics, and their enemies are the Rangers. So we'd like to remember our friend Clifford Mahooty, who passed away last year. And also, if you know any police officers, this group is called UAP Police, and they are taking stories of police officers that have unusual things happen to them in the field or have taken calls about unusual cases. And if you get a hold of them at that Gmail address, they would love to have a conversation with you and add you to their database. So that, and that music that you heard earlier, that was the late, great Robbie Robertson, who passed away just recently. He is Mohawk Indian. You probably know him for playing with Bob Dylan, and he was the lead guitarist for the band. So and that's how to get in touch with us. And we will conclude this presentation. Thank you for your attention.